your worst overprotective, strict parent story? Story 1. I was 17 and going to see the movie Across the Universe with my friends. I asked and received permission for the time and movie. However, I failed to tell my parents of the nudity in the film. They looked it up online when I was already sitting in the theater and was in trouble when I got home for seeing a page 13 movie at 17. The only nudity is the main girls. I have 2 of those. Edit. I love hearing everyone's response to this. I am new to Reddit, and I enjoy that my highest rated post is about nudity. Story 2. My 18-year-old girlfriend of 3 years, I was 19, told her mom that we were active, and she banned us from talking and filed a restraining order. Haven't talked to her since. Story 3. In high school, my dad forbid me to talk to anyone of the opposite. After being caught at the bowling alley on a double date with my boyfriend, he threatened to taser me in the car home in front of my friend. After a week of his anger not subsiding, I just took it and said okay to everything he said and all the punishments. He became angry with my lack of emotional response to his psychological punishments. So he called the police to have me escorted out of the home and have me taken to some sort of juvie shelter. Thankfully, I already had a backup plan in place with my friend, whose parents and my mom gave consent for me to stay there. Story 4. Whenever I wanted to hang out with someone my parents didn't know, they would call the school and personally ask teachers about that said student and have a grading sheet based on what the teacher says. Needless to say, I spent a lot of time hanging out with insert name parents knew, but was somewhere else. Story 5. Oh boy, I have lots of fodder for this one. I'm a college student, not allowed to watch kissing scenes on TV. I'm 19, not allowed to talk to boys, ever, not allowed to talk to a girl with the door closed. I'm a girl, not allowed to hang out with my friends. I only did that just once for the last day of high school. Need to call every time before I go to class, after I go to class, when I fall asleep, and when I wake up, or before any major event. Usually 10 to 12 calls a day. This has been decreased to about 6. Progressed, discouraged from doing any household chores throughout middle and high school, so I could focus on my studies. I'm 19, and I don't know how to wash my clothes or use the dishwasher. Edit. Yes, I'm Asian Indian. About the last point, I know now how to use a dishwasher or wash my own clothes, and that's only because I had friends to help and or Google. I just feel incredibly stupid for learning how to do things that most peers of my age group know already. Story 6. One winter, I was in high school. I was going to go to a friend's house who lived about 14 a mile down the road. My dad told me I couldn't walk because it was icy out. I said, "Can I drive then?" And he said, "No, it's icy out." He then insisted on driving me and having me call him to pick me up later on. Then a couple months after I graduated from college, shortly before I moved away for a job, I was hanging out with a friend at about 1100 at night, and my dad called me and told me to come home because it was too late for me to be out. I told him I was too old for him to be telling me that and hung up. Story 7. My neighbor would never let her son eat anything that she hadn't personally given to him. I don't mean like she had to personally cook it or anything. She just had to be the one giving it to him. If he ever went to people's houses to play or birthday parties, she'd pack him a lunch with a protein shake thing and a yogurt and a cereal bar or something. We thought it was because he had some kind of dietary requirements or allergies or something, but no, she just didn't want other people feeding her son. Story 8. My mom isn't that strict, but she's overprotective and gets insane when she doesn't know what is happening. I live on a different continent at this point, and it still took about a year to convince her that if 2 days pass without me emailing I am alive, it is still reasonable to assume I am. My mom and brother came to visit me in New York, and we went to Empire State Building. My mom was already there, so me and my brother went alone. He was telling me how she keeps freaking out at home when I'm out of touch, and we were waiting in line for a long time. So we started joking that she's probably freaking out even now. She was right there. She just didn't go up with us. When we came down, she really was talking to a cop already. Most embarrassing was when I was in high school and went on a date to watch Bruce Almighty, and she knew that, but didn't hear that I was going for a movie. It was pretty late. I didn't look at my cell phone at all and didn't put on vibrate, but I checked it in the middle of the film, and I had tons of missed calls from her plus texts from my friends begging me to talk to my mother, and WTF am I doing? I went to a restroom to give her a call, but she wasn't there to be contacted because she rushed out, leaving her phone to search for me. We live in a city. How would she find me is a question. I ended up missing half of the movie. Fun times. Story 9. My dad is friends with this couple whose son was failing a bunch of classes. Instead of taking away the kid's phone or something, they moved everything in his room to a storage facility except for his mattress, pillow, and duvet. They even painted his walls white. The kid got so bored staring at the ceiling, he studied and finished the year with all A's. Story 10. My cousin broke up with her college boyfriend, who then wanted to get back with her. My cousin's mom, my aunt, made the boyfriend write an apology letter to everyone in my family. Because of the distress he caused, the only reason we knew he broke up with my cousin was because we received the apology letter in the mail. We were like, what the? Story 11. My mother had a form of OCD that meant that she always needed to be aware of absolutely everything and control everything. She'd go through everything in my bedroom and read it. And so I learned real quick to keep private stuff on the computer. Neither of my parents knew how to use it. If I had a disagreement with friends, not only would she demand to know the details, but she'd actually lecture them about it. On one occasion, me lied about what happened to make myself look better, and she marched over to the friend's house and lost it on her. I lost all friends in that neighborhood pretty quick, and their parents smelled the crazy too. So it was pretty uncomfortable until we moved away. The worst part, though, was that she'd tracked my periods. I'm still not really sure why. I never felt like she ever thought I was much of a pregnancy risk. After I moved in with a boyfriend, she actually called me up at college and wanted to know if I'd lost my virginity yet. Eventually, I learned to not tell her anything. We haven't talked in a few years. Story 12. I went to high school with a girl who graduated with honors, aced the SAT, and got into a very prestigious university, one of the top 20 in U.S. news. Her parents didn't want her away from their supervision and made her go to a community college for 2 years and then finish her degree at a much less prestigious university in the same city. She had to live at home and commute to campus. When she graduated, they informed her that she was now allowed to date and have a boyfriend if she wanted, but still had to live at home until she got married. And no, they're not immigrant from a conservative country, nor are they very religious. Story 13. I was 21 at the time and wanted to go bar hopping during San Diego's Comic-Con. I told them that I was going to stay at a hotel with my friend because we're drinking and my parents' house is half an hour away. Come 1:30 a.m., I get a million phone calls to get my home because it's late. I sober up and leave around 2:30. And not a heavy drinker, so it wasn't hard to determine my sobriety. Don't drive drunk. I get home. My dad is waiting by the door. I saunter by, take a shower, and go to bed. The next morning, my dad gives me for smelling like alcohol when I walked in. All I had to say was, well, I didn't have to drive back last night, but someone demanded me home regardless of knowing what I was doing. He shut up. Story 14. Meet my first best friend when I was 7. We were so close for the next 9 years. He was only allowed to go to school, his house and my house. Would hang almost every day. He jumped out of a balcony and timed it due that his mother would see it when she was returning from work. Sucked. I was going to hang out with some friends at 15, and there were going to be some guys there. I was insecure and didn't have many friends and hadn't been invited to hang out with anyone in months. So I was really excited. My parents were gone somewhere and were going to get home in time to bring me. But they decided to get ice cream or something and came home an hour late. I wasn't going to go an hour after the rest of my friends got there. Mom told me it must have been God's will, and I probably would have been raped. I missed out on the only time I was invited to something that summer. Story 15. My mom called the police on me once because I was an hour late and wasn't answering the phone. I can't be out after dark 9 p.m. lights out on a school night. Can't sleep over at anyone's house that isn't family. I thought this would stop once I turned 18, but nope. Story 16. My parents have a pointer. She's my father's hunting dog, but my mom is crazy about her and treats her like a baby. One day we were all sitting in the garden at night talking, eating late supper when 2 hunters come and ask my father to take the dog and come with them because they can't find the boar they had just shot. My mom, she can't go. I just gave her a bath. She can get sick. My father didn't say a word. Stood up, took the dog, and left with his friends. She found the boar and didn't get sick. Story 17. My childhood friend was not able to sleep over at other people's houses until she was a senior in high school. Her mom had known me since grade school, and she still wasn't able to sleep over. Her mom also forbade her from going out of the house unless she kept her cell phone on her at all times and called her mom once she got to wherever she was going, and then once every hour after that. She has an older sister that moved a couple hours away because of her parents. One day her sister didn't pick up the phone the first time they called. Her mom assumed the worst and drove to her sister's house only to find out she didn't pick up because her phone was out of battery. My friend is in college now, and her parents told her she was to pick from a college nearby, otherwise they would not support her. They bought her a condo near the uni she goes to so that she'll be stuck living by them until she finishes paying them back for the condo. Can you imagine being stuck in one major area your entire life? You wouldn't even be able to look for better jobs across the country because you were stuck living in one place. That would drive me crazy. Story 18. I have so many stories, so many. The most ridiculous one happened a few weeks ago, and thinking back, it only makes me laugh. So I'm 20 right now, and I commute to college. I'm not too involved because my parents always want me home before 10, otherwise they'll be worried sick about me. This semester, I found a club that I was really interested in joining because it was a bunch of kids from my major and it seemed like it would be really helpful to get to know everyone. The meeting was 9 to 10:30 p.m., so I told my mom about it a week in advance so she wouldn't throw a fit about me going to it. That day, she was texting me, and out of nowhere, she texted me asking what's zombie night. I was so confused until I remembered that the meeting was zombie-themed. We were going to talk about how a zombie outbreak would affect our jobs in the future and what kind of measures would take to protect ourselves against them. Sounds like a party, right? Well, it sounded like one to my mother, who saw that I was attending it on FB and insisted I come right home. I thought she was joking, so I called her to make sure, and to my surprise, she started yelling at me about how I lied to her about the zombie party and how this is the reason she couldn't trust me about anything. Happy ending, though. When I got home that night, we got into another fight. But then she realized how much she overreacted, and since then, things have been a lot easier. My curfew has been pushed back, too. Story 19, well, my dad didn't let me drive to my friend's house that was only 3 minutes away. I was 19, and I had my license for a year. I've been driving to college every day. Story 20, this still makes me laugh. When I was 13, I spent my allowance on glossy women's magazines, Cosmo and Clio, for those Aussies playing at home. These magazines are very open about. And living in a strict Christian household, it was fascinating to me. One day, when all the family were gathered, my cousin found a sealed section containing large pictures of dicks and talking A4 size. Before I could stop her, she grabbed a magazine, opened it to a spread of 2 A4 size pictures, and dumped it on my mother's lap, declaring, "Look, Ani black odds, Mom." The room went silent. At the time, my mom and I were both mortified. She threw out my entire collection. Now, we are no longer Christians, and Mom and I can have a great laugh about the Great Lap incident. I used to not be able to ride my bike outside of the driveway. It was dumb when I was a kid as I lived on a quiet street. I later found out that there was a pedophile down the street. Story 21, my mother is pretty up. I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers except with one friend, and only because she was friends with the mom. I wasn't allowed to hang out with anyone without parental supervision until high school. My younger brother later told me she used to follow me around and watch us from a distance. She thought I had joined a gang because I bought some stuff from Hot Topic. She didn't let me join any after-school activities or extracurriculars. Not even debate. She thought I was doing drugs because I had trouble waking up in the mornings, I was moody, and I'd stay in my room and listen to music all the time. She would complain to my teachers because I read books all the time instead of doing extra math homework. I'm very careful about not giving her anyone's contact information or the exact locations of where I hang out because I know she'll overstep boundaries and stalk people. I once woke up to half my contact list on my phone deleted, all the numbers of people she didn't know, and ever since then I've always kept my devices secure. She found my journal where I doodled, wrote stupid short stories, brainstormed and ranted that I kept hidden and private. She yelled at me for writing things that made her sound bad if somebody found, and read it was hidden for a reason, women, and made me destroy the entries in question. This was a huge violation of my privacy and extremely invasive, and one of the main reasons I don't love her. I ended up developing a cipher for my entries and didn't write down anything personal. As a college freshman, I had to be home right after classes. I learned to schedule my semesters so classes were spread out throughout the day so I could be away from her and have some peace. I kept ignoring her and came home around 78 every day. So she changed it to having to be home before dark. She's convinced that I'm sneaking around behind her back having with random people, even though I've told her a million times I'm not interested in. But every time I go out, even when I tell her the truth about what I'm doing, she asks if I was. She used to call me 10 times a day, and I just stopped answering. Now it's only 2 to 3 times a day, unless I'm a bit late, in which case she'll spam me and call any friends whose number she has to interrogate them. I've only stuck around so far because she pays my college tuition and gives me food and a place to live. I'm leaving and never looking back soon as I graduate, though, and don't have to worry about tuition. Edit copy-paste mishap. Story 22, my grandmother forbids my father from letting me ride a bicycle because she thinks cyclists are at a greater risk of being fatally killed by being hit by a car or truck. I think the chances are probably the same either way. Story 23, I was banned from free reading, aka any reading outside school requirements, because I read too many books on my own and they thought it was affecting my studies. During the time that was in place, I would hide books in the bathroom and read them there. On average, I would spend roughly 20 minutes sneak reading Calvin Hobbes and Harry Potter. I was 14 at the time on the toilet. One time, my stepmom asked to use the bathroom after me, and it just dawned on me 6 years later that they probably thought I was masturbating and hiding in the bathroom. Story 24, I was seeing this girl. Her parents stole her phone, read our text message conversations, called to let me know what's going on. Her family was very religious. We had been texting some things very recently, so they read probably everything we had been saying the past week. I get a phone call from her mother, asking me questions about who I was, age, etc. Basically some weird threat that her and her husband were aware. A month later, I never heard from her again. Most likely because her parents didn't want me seeing her because I wasn't religious. A couple years later at 19, she's married to some religious boy. Story 25 last year. At Ole Miss, a mother tried to go through sorority recruitment with her daughter. She dressed like a freshman woman and tried to sneak into her daughter's recruitment group and attend the recruitment parties with her daughter. The recruitment counselors figured it out pretty quickly, and the Greek life office had to have someone her out. I can't imagine how she thought her presence was going to help her daughter. Story 26. I went out with some friends who came to visit me from out of town. I was also home from college for the weekend. I didn't spend a dime on drinks, and when I knew it wasn't safe to drive, I gave the DD my address so I could arrive home safely. I even texted my parents throughout the night, mentioning the names of the people I was with and the bars I was at, so they would be fine. My friends take me home safely. I wake up the next morning and am suddenly grounded for the rest of the weekend because I shouldn't drink to get drunk. I'm 22. Also, they told me if I ever drink again, they would stop supporting me. Going to nope out of that situation once I graduate. Story 27 at my university orientation. A mother asked if she could organize the foods that her son could eat and could not eat on his meal plan. She wanted to make sure he was getting the proper nutrition. Story 28. I wasn't allowed to leave to go to college. I go to the local university and live at home. But currently, my brother is on another continent doing God knows what all the time. And it's honestly different because you're a girl. I feel bad because I've realized after a while, my parents need me. They're able to do without my irresponsible brother. It still doesn't make making friends and growing up any easier, especially when all your high school friends left and everyone at college only hangs out when you don't want to get caught in traffic. Story 29. Had a friend whose parents used to make her call them when she got to her friend's house. Next door, they could literally have stood on the porch and watch her cross the yard and go into the house with her friend, but she had to call and let them know she got there safely. They wanted her to be an astronaut. Story 30. I posted this once before, but here you go. I had a friend in high school who had extremely food protective parents. They were young, in their 30s, and very thin, attractive people. Their obsession with staying thin had the opposite effect on her, and she always had a little extra weight. But that didn't stop her parents from not allowing her to have seconds for dinner, not allowing her to eat junk food, and telling parents who hosted sleepovers or parties to not let her eat the snack food. Because of the heavy restrictions they put on her, she would eat snack foods when her parents weren't around and her weight ballooned. Fast forward several years. She's still overweight, but finally happy and engaged, and also has almost no contact with her parents. Story 31. My uncle lives alone, and once went away for the weekend without telling my grandma. She called, and he didn't answer. This was back before everyone had mobiles, so she got the police to break into his flat. He came home and thought had been burgled. Said grandma also called up the leisure center when my dad was playing five-side. He was called urgently to reception over the tannoy, only to be told that grandma was calling to tell him it was icy at the top of the street and to be careful coming home. He was 25 at the time. Story 32. When I was young, I couldn't watch Captain Planet because the witchcraft they used went against my mother's good Christian values. I also couldn't watch the Smurfs, but I haven't the faintest idea why. What I did watch, though, on a regular basis was Dinosaurs Not the Mama, which was pretty vulgar if I remember right. Story 33. I had a friend who was never allowed to go out with friends go to their houses, nor was he allowed any video games, and all social networks and known time-wasting sites were blocked on their computer. The one time he did go out for a charity event, the dad stood on the traffic island for 4 hours and stared at us, without interacting with anyone. Story 34. My mom caught me and my buddy smoking weed in my room when I was 16. I can't describe the scream that followed when she opened the door and smelled the weed. It was the most horrific sound my mom ever made. I can only accurately describe her reaction would have been the same if she opened the door and saw me stabbing a body or something crazy like that. Then she locked herself in the bathroom, continued to scream as if she was being murdered. When she came out, she drove us to CVS so I could take a drug test at 3 a.m. Edit. Story 35. My friend's parents had a recorder on their landline. This was just a few years before cell phones really took off, so all our conversations from maybe 12 to 15 years old were recorded. Story 36. Nothing insane, but I had a friend in high school whose family was Mormon. Met him when I was 15 or 16, same circle of friends, so would spend the night at each other's houses and watch movies, play Xbox, etc. His parents would always call ahead and interview the parents hosting the overnight. As in, they had a list of questions prepared, and the parents had to answer them to their satisfaction. Always thought that was odd. His parents were actually really nice, great people, and I always enjoyed interacting with them when I was at his house. They were just really protective when it came to allowing him into new environments. Story 37. I wasn't allowed to read any books that weren't godly, meaning they had to promote Christianity in some way. Harry Potter was, of course, the devil's book, But Lord of the Rings was fine because it apparently has parallelisms to the Bible. Story 38, old girlfriend of mine couldn't be out anywhere unless her parents knew exactly where she was going, who she would be with, and what time she would be coming home, to the minute exactly. Alongside that, they had her phone GPS'd, so they could know where she always is, and if she left her phone at home, she would get in major trouble. She had to be home by 11 p.m. No matter what, she could never sleep over at anyone's house, unless it was someone who was in her family. She's 21, and her parents are still like this. Story 39, I've got two. Once when I was about 14, it was Easter Sunday, and I went to my friend's house to hang out with her. She called up a few of our other friends to hang out as well. Her mom dropped us off. There were about 4 of us, and we were going to go to the mall, but it was closed weird. So we walked across the street to the theater and got tickets to watch a movie. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, so I didn't call my parents, and I didn't think to use my friend's phone to call them. Anyway, it's about 9 p.m. once we get out of the movie, and my friend's older brother comes and picks us up and takes us back to her house. Call my mom to come get me. She's pissed. By the time I finally get home, it's 11-ish. After that incident, I was not allowed to stay out past 7 p.m., not even if I was at a friend's house, and their parents were there until I was about 18, 19. But after that, I could stay out until 10. The other one is I was in college about 2021. It's finals week, and I decided to stay after my class to study for my tests. I was in the library, so I put the phone on silent. It's about 4 p.m., and I've been constantly checking my phone because I know how my parents are. I didn't think it would be a big deal to not text them since I wasn't going to be out late. Then around 6, I stopped checking my phone. I get back home around 7:30, and my mom is freaking out wondering where I have been. She told me that my dad had gone out to look for me, and that she had turned on some kind of GPS phone tracking feature on my phone via some online ATT thing. Not too sure. Then I checked my phone, and I had roughly 16 missed calls from my parents, my boyfriend, and several of my friends, along with about 12 texts from everyone. LY, that GPS phone tracking thing is still turned on for my phone. I should probably ask them to turn off that feature. Y'all need independence? Story 40, I was teaching China at the time, managing the foreign teachers for the school I worked at. One of the incoming foreign teacher mother decided to speak with me. I was at first like, how old is this guy, and why am I talking to him, Mom? He was 23. She and I ended up speaking nearly every night for an hour until he got to China. It was then the time increased to 2 hours due to her being in a panic tizzy about her darling little boy. Normally, I would have told the lady to off and refuse to hire the son. However, at that point in time, the school was short teachers, and they wanted to get this guy in the door. He turned out to be a worthless. His mom, after a few weeks, stopped bugging me, and we talked about once a week for her weekly update on little Mr. Sunshine. Maybe I should have told her the story where he went to a brothel, got his rocks off, and turned out that he forgot his wallet. He then called a Chinese teacher who went to the brothel, and the poor gal had to lend the ass clown the money to pay for his evening of indoor sports. Story 41, I got grounded for being home 10 minutes early because I was cutting it too close to my curfew time, 9:00 p.m. I was 17 years old and graduated from high school. I got grounded every week. My life was a lot like Butter's hamburgers. Story 42, my mom is crazy overprotective. I know she means well, but she has made life quite a headache at times. Some of the worst events include threatening to call the police on a pedophile I met at a Renaissance fair. Said pedophile was a 15-year-old guy I met who liked my costume and gave me his email. I was 14 at the time. He was with his mom at the fair, for crying out loud. When my mom caught me with the email, she insisted the kid was actually a creepy old child molester, despite the fact my friend's mom, who took me to the fair, tried to convince her otherwise. It took my dad intervening to get my mom to not call the police. My mom stalked me and my friends at another Ren fair. I was 17 then. She hid behind a tree. When she was caught, then refused to admit to my dad that she was ever at the fair in the first place. I took a shower my first week at college, and my mom tried to call me when I was unable to get to my phone. In the span of the 15 minutes I was in the bathroom, she called 50 times. The campus police also showed up to my room shortly after check on me. I thought my dad was going to have her committed after that. Her reason for calling the cops was that she thought I killed myself because I was mildly homesick earlier in the day. WTF. She threatened to leave my dad because he was okay with me picking up my friend from a train station late at night. I was 24 and no longer living at home for this event. She also threatened the same thing anytime my dad didn't agree with her. Needless to say, he calls her bluff now, and she never leaves. Even my grandmother, her own mother, laughs at her threats. My mom tries really hard to be a good parent, but she simply can't help her fear. She lost her father in a tragic event, and I think that fact and the fact I'm an only child made her the way she is. Thankfully, I don't live with her anymore, so I'm hoping the worst is behind us. Story 43, I live with my grandparents, and one time we had a conversation, and this is about how it went. Grandparents, you need to get out of the house more. Me, can I get a car? Grandparents, no, me, can I get my license? Grandparents know me. Can I get a ride with a friend to go somewhere? Grandparents know me. Can I leave the house? Grandparents know. Story 44. My parents make up rules without much of a reason beyond that they're irrationally scared. Some such rules are I am not allowed to work as a waitress. I am not allowed to sleep in the same room as the boyfriend I live with when we visit my parents' home. I am not allowed to lock my door. Mother will check at 2 a.m. and knock until it is locked. No online shopping. Never bring meat into the house. Not even kibble food for the cat. I am not allowed to take out student loans to pay for college. They insist on paying, claiming it would make them look bad in our ethnic community if they didn't. Story 45. This one confused me as a child. I was allowed to watch the Saturday morning cartoon Spider-Man, but not X-Men, which came right after. X-Men was slightly more violent and had mutation evolution happening, so therefore it wasn't Catholic approved or something. Story 46. Parents tried to read my journal. They said they stumbled upon it, but that's a lie. It was duct taped to the bottom of my bed, surrounded by books and old board games. For about a week, I taped it to my inner thigh until they gave up looking for it. Story 47. I came home with a nose one day from a friend's house, and I went immediately to sleep when I got home because I was really tired. I awoke the next morning with my mom waving a cocaine test kit in front of my face. She saw the tissues in the toilet and assumed I was snorting coke. Story 48. This is totally going to get buried, but I have a lot I could share. I think the most notable one is I had no idea it was a thing to put milk on cereal until I was 20 years old in college. I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I was homeschooled, and my parents don't eat cereal. I had no idea and am laughed at terribly now whenever I mention it at 22. My friend pointed out the thing about this is not that it's just strict. It's that they actively kept me from knowing a super relevant piece of information that everyone knows. Story 49. Kid in my class in 6th grade wanted to take a retest on a test because he thought his parents would be disappointed in his grade. He got a 98 on the test. The teacher didn't let him retest. Story 50. Posted this before, but here it is again. Me and the siblings were sitting at the back of the theater. My mother was at the front with my dad. Cast of crowded theater. We're all in late elementary, early high school, so right at the prime age to get right embarrassed. Some PG-13 scene comes on. Think it was the one from the island, and she gets out of her seat at the front of the theater right as it starts, walks up the aisle, and tells us to leave the theater. I wanted to crawl into a hole and die. TLDR, mom walked from the opposite end of the theater to tell me to close my eyes, so I don't see some PG-13 ScarJo booby. Story 51. My friend wasn't allowed to eat anything while home alone until she was 12 for fear of choking. Fortunately, her parents have gotten a little better. Story 52. Oh boy, I have loads of these stories. I remember one time when I was like 13 after my regents, a bunch of my friends are going to hang out in the school's park. I tried calling my dad and mom to ask them for permission using a friend's cell, and they didn't answer, so I just head home. The friend whose cell I borrowed also headed home. When I get home, my brother and sisters are all calling me a liar and telling me my mom was going to kill me when she got home, while not telling me what it was I did. Then my older sister throws me a bone and says you went to the park after school without mom's permission. I spent 20 minutes trying to convince them that I didn't go to the park, and they're just telling me how great of an actor I was. I didn't even know how they knew I was trying to go to the park. Apparently, my mom called my friend back, and she said she either went to the park or she went home, and my mom took that as went to the park. When she got home, I had called 3 different friends to have them confirm that I hadn't gone to the park. Don't even get me started on the recent stories.